This 2020 election is one for the history books, especially for people of color. California Senator Kamala Harris, now the first black woman to be nominated for vice president on a major party ticket, promising to be a champion for the voiceless and forgotten. Her nomination sending pride through much of the black community.
By putting a black woman on the ticket with Biden, I think you give so many people in this country something to vote for rather than choosing between this or that.
I am totally convinced that a black woman vice president will incentivize not only black women, but in particular, it will incentivize young black women.
And while the excitement about Senator Harris was there, at times it became overpowered by the words of presidential candidates Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Their words at times forcing many in the black community to take a step back and weigh what the candidates were really trying to say.
We got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
Nobody has done more for the black community than Donald Trump.
All of these factors weighing heavily on voters as they head to the polls. Many black voters especially feeling the pressure of picking between the two candidates. Many looking at the handling of the coronavirus pandemic and police brutality while making their decision.
I know that as a voter and as a black woman that there's a job that I have to do in order to get a representative who will come close to protecting my people in office.
But no matter who we vote for, we must realize that we've come a long, long way. After the Voting Rights Act of 1965 passed, there were more than 250,000 new black voters who were registered to vote. Now, in 2020, a record 30 million African Americans are registered to vote. And if you need more inspiration to use your voice, there is no one better to inspire you than the late, great Representative John Lewis.
Vote is an opportunity to be on the right side of history. It is a chance to cast a vote by the people, of the people, and for the people. So I ask you, if not us, then who? If not now, then when? The time has arrived to tear down the barrier to the ballot box. Today, we are able to do our part in this long fight for the very soul of our nation.
Good evening, everyone. It is election night across America, Tuesday, November 3rd. Thank you for joining us for this special edition of BNC Prime. I'm Laverne McGee.
And I'm Fred Hickman. It's finally here. And this begins our My Vote 2020 special election coverage. It's a big night for America, of course, as we await to see the outcome of not only the presidential election, but also those key U.S. Senate, House, and mayoral races as well. And we know now that some of the results from North Carolina are going to be delayed. That's after hours were extended at least at 4 different polling places.
Polls are also now closed in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Virginia, and Vermont.
And in the days leading up to the election, Joe Biden and Donald Trump stumped hard in Pennsylvania. It's
one of the key battleground states in this election. Philadelphia has seen its fair share in the news, especially after the recent death of Walter Wallace Jr. And joining us with a closer look at what's going on in Philly is BNC's own Dre Clark. Dre, how are you this evening?
Well, good evening, guys. First, let me give you a sense of where we are standing tonight. We're here on the Benjamin Franklin Parkway, standing in what's called the heart of Center City. Now, Philadelphia is home to the largest number of registered black voters in the state, and most of them are Democrats. So you can understand why Joe Biden spent so much time campaigning here. In fact, as you mentioned a moment ago, Mr. Biden was here in Philadelphia earlier today, making 3 campaign stops and speaking directly to voters. He said he was encouraged to see the strong turnout across the city, and he believes black voters here in Philadelphia will help him win the state and also ultimately the election. Meanwhile, here in Philadelphia, like many other large cities across the country, they are preparing for any possible demonstrations or civil unrest. Businesses downtown are boarded up, and police officers have been deployed to areas that traditionally have been hotspots for demonstrators, but they're really hoping for a peaceful night here in Philadelphia. Back here live now here on the Parkway, but it certainly will be a long night for election workers here in Philadelphia. They're expecting some 400,000 mail-in ballots to come in before the night is out. Statewide, that number stands at 2.5 million. Translation, it's going to take a lot of time to authenticate and count those ballots, and so that means we may not know the winner of Pennsylvania tonight. In fact, some say it could take days. We're live in Philadelphia for the Black News Channel. I'm Dre Clark. Send it back to you.
All right, Dre, thanks so much, and stay safe out there. Well, several seats are up for grabs in the House and the Senate.
And they're very important. We're keeping track of all of those seats from Washington, D.C., where we find BNC's Del Walters. Good evening, Del.
Hey, good evening, Fred and Laverne. It has been a long time since this much real estate in Washington, D.C. was up for grabs. Now, of course, there is the White House, which everyone is keeping an eye on. But over the recent months, the Senate has actually come into play. There are 35 Senate seats that are up for grabs. The Republicans now have a 47-53 majority in the Senate. But 8 Senate seats are grabbing the headlines, including 1 in South Carolina and 2 in Ruby Red, Georgia. Now, in South Carolina, there is the possibility that 2 African Americans could represent the Palmetto State, and that would be a seismic shift in that state. Jamie Harrison is trying to unseat Lindsey Graham. As you know, he has tied himself strongly to President Trump. And then in Georgia, John Ossoff, the Democrat, has mounted a serious challenge to David Perdue, who also has linked himself to President Trump. Also in Georgia, Reverend Raphael Warnock, who is the pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, of course, that is the church of the late Dr. Martin Luther King, is well in the lead, but he has to clear that 50% plus 1 threshold, which means that as far as the Senate is concerned, we could actually be waiting until January 2nd, January 3rd, to figure out exactly who is going to control the Senate. Now, on the House side, no one expects there to be any change. Nancy Pelosi will probably be the Speaker of the House. No one expects the Democrats to lose control in California. The seats there are held by African Americans looking solid, Maxine Waters and Karen Bass. And in Texas, because of that surge in Democratic vote, no one expects the Texas delegation to change either. In fact, everyone tonight is watching the numbers nationwide. They're hoping that a rising tide floats all ships, and they are all just watching and wondering and waiting. Fred and Laverne, back to you guys.
All right, Del. Del Walters in D.C. We'll be getting back to you shortly.
And there are 6 battleground states to keep an eye on this election.
And one of the biggies is Florida, key swing state, and it could actually set the tone for who wins and if that winner is going to be named tonight. BNC's Tashani Whitlow is standing by with more concerning the Sunshine State.
That's right, Fred. The polls just closed and numbers are still coming in, but with early and mail-in voting, more than 9 million Floridians have already cast their ballots. Now, the Sunshine State is known for razor-thin elections, and if Florida is the state to watch, then Pinellas County could hold the key to who the next president will be. The county makes up liberal St. Petersburg and conservative Clearwater, which means it's a melting pot, predominantly white, with non-whites making up around 20% of the population. Pinellas County has backed the right horse in the last 6 presidential elections outside of the 2000 debacle. Now the swing state has swung back and forth between Democrats and Republicans, and whatever candidate hopes to win Florida needs to win the vote. Both campaigns will be closely watching this community with under 1 million residents, all with hopes of securing the 29 electoral votes on the line. Now, right now, Joe Biden is leading Trump by less than a point here in Florida. That's according to Real Clear Politics, which means the state is still up for grabs. Stay with BNC. I'll tell you how much money former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg paid to attract voters, including former felons in the Sunshine State, this election, and if it will help Biden win the presidency. Fred and Laverne, back to you.
All right, thank you very much. And just to stress how important Florida is, especially for Donald Trump, the last Republican to lose Florida and go on to win the presidency was Calvin Coolidge in 1924. So there are several different ways that Vice President Biden can get there, but there's very little room to see how President Trump gets to 270 without Florida.
And Florida, of course, is home to many African Americans, people of color, Latinos. So this is a state that could really go either way, because we know that there's a stronghold of Trump supporters there, the villages, the senior citizens there who've supported him throughout the years. But again, this African American vote that certainly is a key factor in this election. Florida being one of the states where they are really pushing to get that minority vote.
And in South Florida, you've got a strong Latino population, obviously. Many of them trending toward Donald Trump. We're talking about the Cuban Americans, Venezuelan Americans, those folks. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that unfolds tonight. But they're counting already. We'll know what the deal is pretty soon.
Absolutely. And we have the Afro-Latinas, of course. We have Spanish-speaking people who are of Black descent, of course.
Yep.
They fall into a separate category. And one of the things we're finding is that the Black vote is certainly not monolithic. There is a wide disparity and differences within the Black community. And all of these issues are on the table. All of these items we'll be discussing here as we continue with our election coverage.
That's right. And right now we'll take a look at Joe Biden headquarters. This campus stationed at Chase Bank Center in Wilmington, Delaware. And so they're getting all set up for whatever happens to develop tonight.
And we're taking a live look from Black Lives Matter Plaza in Washington, D.C. You can see people gathering around in anticipation for the results of this election. And once again, we will have continuing coverage throughout the evening. Please stay with us for special election coverage. We'll be right back after this break.